Have you ever thought that some of Hollywood's brightest stars would meet their end in cold, silent water? They once made America laugh, cry, and grow up alongside their unforgettable roles. Yet their final curtain call didn't come with applause or spotlights, but with desperate moments struggling against the waters of fate. A legendary sitcom icon of the 80s, the childhood symbol for millions of American families, a youthful star of Glee, the voice and spirit of an entire generation, and other talents whose names you might never expect, all taken by the same tragedy drowning. These aren't just names on a death list. These are stories that shook Hollywood losses that continue to haunt American audiences. And today, we revisit the lives of 5 of Hollywood's brightest stars stolen away by the water. The most shocking of them all must be a heavenly voice, the one that silenced the world, the moment she sang, "I Will Always Love You." Whitney Houston, 1963-2012. Tragedy in a hotel room before the Grammy Awards. February 11, 2012. Los Angeles glittered with lights, the city buzzing in anticipation of the annual Grammy Awards. Hotels overflowed with artists, managers, reporters. Everyone was preparing for a night of spectacle. But just hours before the red carpet rolled out, a thunderbolt shattered the excitement. Whitney Houston, the golden voice of America, was dead. And what made the world shudder, she didn't collapse on stage, nor in a recording studio, but was found in the bathtub of room 434 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. That noon, Whitney had still been chatting and laughing with friends and family. No one imagined that only minutes later, it would all turn into tragedy. She walked into the bathroom carrying a glass of wine and some prescription medication companions in her long battle with anxiety and exhaustion. The door closed. No one knows exactly what happened inside. When her manager and assistant realized Whitney had been gone too long, they knocked but heard no response. Fear rising, they forced the door open, and the haunting scene lay before them. Whitney lay motionless in the tub, her head submerged, skin pale. The water was still warm steam fogging the mirror. On the floor lay spilled bottles of red wine and strips of anti-anxiety pills. A desperate fight. They screamed for help. Hotel staff rushed in dialing 911. A hotel nurse and on-call doctor began CPR immediately. The small bathroom became a makeshift ER. The steady rhythm of chest compressions echoed mixed with muffled sobs. One tried mouth-to-mouth, another checked her pulse. Her body was pressed down, lifted up again and again. Everyone prayed for a miracle. 20 minutes. They didn't give up. But Whitney's heart never beat again. 3:55 p.m. Doctors declared Whitney Houston gone. 48 years of life, 30 years of glory and pain ended in a bathtub. The harsh truth. The autopsy later revealed a darker picture. The official cause, accidental drowning, but contributing factors included heart disease and cocaine use. In her blood were Xanax, Flexeril, and Benadryl sedatives, muscle relaxants, antihistamines, but not at lethal levels. Together, they formed a dangerous cocktail alcohol drugs, a weakened heart, and a moment of carelessness. Just a few minutes of lost consciousness, and the woman who once made the world rise to its feet in applause was silenced by still water. A tragedy sealed Whitney. Houston's death was the sum of many tragedies. A heart damaged by years of addiction. A spirit worn down after decades under pressure scrutiny and blinding lights. A lonely moment in a hotel bathroom supposed to be a place of peace, but instead became her final stage. That day, the music world stopped. People realized it wasn't just a diva they had lost, but also a piece of collective memory, the voice that once made all humanity hold its breath when she sang, "And I will always love you." When the news of Whitney Houston's death broke, the world seemed to stop breathing. Just hours later, the Grammy Awards turned into an unofficial memorial. Jennifer Hudson stood on stage, her eyes red with tears, singing, "I Will Always Love You," in tribute, a moment that brought audiences across the globe to tears. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, mournfully called Whitney, her goddaughter. Beyoncé, Mariah Carey, Elton John, and countless other stars all shared their grief on social media. Fans around the world gathered in the streets, holding candles, singing her timeless hits. Greatest love of all, I wanna dance with somebody, I will always love you. The American media called her death one of the greatest cultural shocks of the decade. Whitney Houston was born in 1963 into a family steeped in music. Her mother, gospel singer Cissy Houston, her cousin Dionne Warwick, and her godmother none other than Aretha Franklin. In the 1980s and 1990s, she reigned as the greatest female vocalist on earth, with a 5-octave range, 6 Grammy Awards, and over 200 million records sold worldwide. Her role in The Bodyguard 1992 cemented her as a legend, while its soundtrack, I Will Always Love You, became the best-selling single ever by a female artist. But behind the glitter were deep cracks, a violent marriage with Bobby Brown, very public drug addiction, and a career in freefall. Whitney checked into rehab multiple times, but never broke free completely. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at just $20 million, far less than at her peak, diminished by reckless spending and financial losses. Her estate was passed to her only daughter, Bobbi Kristina Brown. But in a chilling twist, Bobbi Kristina herself died tragically in 2015, also from drowning in a bathtub. The world came to call it the Houston Curse. The funeral. A farewell in music. On February 18, 2012, Whitney Houston's funeral was held at New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, New Jersey, the very place she had once sung in the choir as a child. The service lasted more than 4 hours, like a final concert. The world's top voices, from Stevie Wonder and Alicia Keys to R. Kelly, sang her home. The entire ceremony was broadcast live, with tens of millions watching worldwide. Her gold-plated casket was laid to rest at Fairview Cemetery beside her father. It was not just the end of an artist's life, but the closing of an era. The era of the voice of an angel. And every time I Will Always Love You is heard, the world is reminded, an angel may have fallen beneath the water, but that voice will never sink. But Whitney was not the only star whose death in water shook the world. A decade later, in 2025, it was not a music diva, but a sitcom legend who met a similar fate. Malcolm Jamal Warner. A tragic drowning. At 54, America's childhood memory, lost to the waves. On July 20th, 2025, at Playa Cocos Beach in Costa Rica, the sound of waves was no longer a gentle summer melody. It became a requiem of fate. No one imagined that here the world would witness the final moments of Malcolm Jamal Warner, the man forever remembered as Theo from The Cosby Show. Warner was on vacation with his family. That day, he spent time playing with his 8-year-old daughter at the shoreline. The gentle father was smiling, keeping an eye on her. Later, he left the shore with a friend waiting a little farther out to do some light surfing. It was a simple, harmless activity. But the ocean is not always kind. Just 15 minutes later, a powerful rip current formed. It wasn't loud or violent, but strong enough to drag Warner and his friend out of the safe zone. Cries for help rang out. The sun still blazed overhead, but the atmosphere grew heavy. Witnesses saw Warner struggling, his eyes fixed desperately on the shore, where his little daughter stood frozen, wide-eyed in terror. Warner's friend was lucky. He fought the current, managed to break free, and swam back to shore. But Warner could not. He was pulled farther and farther away, powerless against the ocean's invisible grip. In that moment of chaos, his daughter was still near the shore. A quick-thinking surfer lifted the little girl onto his board and brought her safely to land. But the tragedy awaiting Warner was still unfolding offshore. He was swept farther and farther away, and then he disappeared. A doctor who happened to be on the beach along with a volunteer surfer immediately dove into the water. They searched frantically, eyes scanning every ripple of the sea. Each second stretched like eternity, 5 minutes feeling like 5 hours. Then they spotted Warner unconscious, floating beneath the blue water. He was rushed to shore, laid on the sand. No breath, no pulse. The crowd stood frozen in silence. 45 minutes of fighting for life. 1:25 p.m. CPR began. The surfer, the doctor, and volunteers took turns. Compressions, breaths, compressions again. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes. Still no response. Normally, when CPR drags on that long without recovery, hope is nearly gone. But for Warner, they refused to stop. And then, after 45 relentless minutes of struggle, everything fell silent. The doctor lowered his head. Warner was declared dead at the scene, age 54. The next day, Costa Rica's Judicial Investigation Department (OIJ) released its findings. Warner had died of asphyxiation by submersion. The death was ruled a tragic accident. His friend, who had been pulled out with him, was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Thankfully, after treatment, he recovered and was discharged days later. What stirred anger after the tragedy was this. Although Playa Cocos had warning signs about rip currents at the time of the accident, there were no professional lifeguards on duty. Locals had long called it a dangerous beach, with past drownings blamed on rip currents, yet supervision remained lax. News of Malcolm Jamal Warner's death spread instantly. Within hours, from Costa Rica to Los Angeles, New York, Europe, and Africa, social media exploded. Messages, crying emojis, old clips from The Cosby Show, they flooded every platform. Fans everywhere called him by the name they loved most. Theo is gone. For those who had grown up with the laughter of the Huxtable family, it felt like a piece of their childhood had just been erased. His colleagues, from castmates on The Resident to stars who had worked with him, were shaken. Tracy Ellis Ross wrote, "She couldn't believe it." Morris Chestnut called Warner a brother, a legend. Headlines blared from Los Angeles Times, People Entertainment Weekly. In the days that followed, Warner's mother spoke publicly, sharing one detail that gave some comfort. She assured fans her son did not suffer and passed away peacefully. Malcolm Jamal Warner was born August 18, 1970, in Jersey City, New Jersey. Even as a child, he stood out for his intelligence and artistic sensitivity. His name itself carried destiny chosen, after two greats activist Malcolm X and jazz pianist Ahmad Jamal. From the start, Warner seemed marked as a child of black art and culture. In 1984, at just 14 years old, Warner made television history as Theodore Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. The series quickly became a phenomenon, bringing the image of an educated modern black family into millions of American homes rare for the time. And Warner, with his bright eyes, mischievous smile, and natural charm, was etched into the memory of millions. For 8 seasons, 1984 to 1992, Theo Huxtable was not just Cliff and Claire's son. He became a companion in the memories of an entire generation. Warner earned an Emmy nomination, rose as a teen idol, and forever tied his name to the golden age of the American sitcom. But he was more than an actor. Warner was a musician, poet, and director. In 2015, he won a Grammy for Best Traditional R&B Performance with Jesus Children alongside Robert Glasper Experiment and Lala Hathaway. In 2023, his spoken word album Hiding in Plain View earned another Grammy nomination. Despite fame from his teenage years, Warner lived a private life, carefully shielding his personal world from the glare of media. In love, he shared a deep bond with actress Michelle Thomas, his Cosby Show co-star, until her death from cancer in 1998, a devastating loss that haunted him for years. Later, he dated Karen Molina White and Oscar winner Regina King. But true peace came in 2017 when he married. A few years later, he and his wife welcomed a daughter, his most cherished treasure, fiercely protected from the public eye. To Warner, his family was his sanctuary. After Warner's passing, the public's questions weren't only about his career, but also his legacy and inheritance. According to realestate.com.au, Warner owned a 5-bedroom home in Decatur, Atlanta, valued around $1.3 million. His total assets, including real estate, acting, music, poetry earnings, and investments, were estimated at about $6 million. But Warner was never one to flaunt wealth. He avoided Hollywood extravagance, focusing instead on his wife Tanisha and their little girl. So it came as no surprise that all he left behind would go to them. Behind the stage lights and prestigious awards, the boy once known as Theo had lived a life of simplicity and warmth. His legacy was not only measured in millions, but in the love he gave to his family and the art he gifted the world. The Warner family chose a private funeral, limited to close relatives and friends. But the grief left behind was not just theirs. It belonged to every community that had grown up with him. That's why Warner's mother announced plans for a public memorial to be held in late 2025 or early 2026, a chance for colleagues, friends, and fans everywhere to gather and honor an artist who had given his all to art and community. The event will also mark the beginning of community initiatives. The Warner family is preparing arts education projects to inspire young Black youth, training programs to nurture fresh talent and community funds, to carry forward Warner's lifelong belief that art can heal and uplift. A legacy that won't be buried. Malcolm Jamal Warner left this world at just 54, but his legacy does not end there. His family and friends are turning this loss into a journey of continuation, keeping his voice alive. When the public memorial takes place, thousands will stand together looking back on Warner's 4-decade journey. And from those memories, one truth will echo: wealth can be left to family, but a spiritual legacy belongs to all of humanity. And if Malcolm Jamal Warner's death in 2025 shook the world 5 years earlier, Hollywood had already been rocked by another tragedy: the loss of a gifted actress, once the shining star of the hit musical series, Glee. Naya Rivera, 1987 to 2020. The mysterious death at Lake Peru and the legacy of a mother. On July 8, 2020, Naya Rivera took her 4-year-old son, Josie Hollis Dorsey, to Lake Peru in Ventura County, California, for an afternoon of boating and swimming. The two rented a pontoon boat and set out at midday. For Naya, Lake Peru wasn't unfamiliar. She had often shared her love for escaping into nature, seeking peace away from years of gossip and headlines. But everyone knew Lake Peru carried a chilling nickname: the Drowning Lake. Beneath its deceptively calm surface lay strong undercurrents, cold depths, visibility of only 12 to 24 inches, and thick underwater plants. It had claimed many lives before. Warning signs lined the shore, but most visitors ignored them. And that day, so did Naya. By afternoon, when a rental worker checked the lake, he noticed the pontoon drifting aimlessly in the middle of the water. On board was only little Josie, still in his life jacket, exhausted, terrified, and alone. Naya was gone. No trace of her. Alarms rang instantly. Police rescue teams and divers were deployed. But Lake Peru gave no mercy. Visibility was near zero. The water was icy currents twisted below the surface. Helicopters circled overhead. Sonar scanned the depths. K-9 units searched the shoreline. Day after day passed. Still no sign of Naya. The world followed every update. Headlines, breaking news, live broadcasts. Millions asked the same question: where is she? What happened on that boat? Finally, on the morning of July 13, 2020, the answer surfaced. And it was more painful than anyone had imagined. Naya Rivera's body was found floating near the same spot where the boat had been discovered. The date carried an eerie twist of fate. It was exactly 7 years to the day since the death of her Glee co-star Corey Monteith. A cruel coincidence that felt almost supernatural. The coroner's report was clear: Naya had died of accidental drowning. No signs of assault, no alcohol or drugs in her system. Just a tragic accident, one that stole the life of a 33-year-old mother. Then came Josie's account, the detail that broke hearts around the world. That day, mother and son had been swimming together. When the water suddenly turned rough, Naya used her last strength to push her son back onto the boat. Josie remembered. She called my name, reached her arm up as if asking for help, and then she went under. Naya Rivera chose to save her child. She let herself sink so that her son could live. It was her final act, one that immortalized her as a heroic mother in the eyes of the world. Hollywood in tears. Her Glee co-stars: Chris Colfer, Amber Riley, Heather Morris, Jane Lynch gathered at Lake Peru during the search. They held hands in a circle, prayed and sang, clinging to fragile hope. When Naya's body was found, they broke down in tears, embracing one another in silence. That moment became a symbol, not just of loss, but of friendship and family, of artists who once shared triumphs and now shared grief. Fans and the LGBTQ+ community. The hashtags Pray for Naya and later JRIP Naya Rivera swept across the globe. Millions of fans shared images of her as Santana Lopez, the strong, confident lesbian character she played on Glee. For the LGBTQ+ community, Santana wasn't just a role, she was representation, a mirror in which they finally saw themselves. Demi Lovato, who played Santana's love interest, wrote, "Naya helped so many LGBTQ+ people see themselves. She will always be an inspiration." Viola Davis called Naya a brilliant talent and an extraordinary mother. Even politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Kamala Harris spoke out praising Naya Rivera as a bold representative of the young Latinx generation. The creators of Glee, Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, and Ian Brennan announced a college fund for Josie, ensuring that Naya's legacy would live on through her son. Before her death, Naya's personal life had seen highs and lows. She was once engaged to rapper Big Sean, but they split before marriage. In 2014, she married actor Ryan Dorsey and welcomed their son Josie in 2015. Their relationship was turbulent, filed for divorce, reconciled, and finally separated in 2018. Despite it all, they co-parented Josie with respect. Her net worth at the time of her death was estimated at $5 million from acting, music, her memoir, Sorry Not Sorry, and real estate. Her estate passed to Josie with Ryan Dorsey as legal guardian. The Rivera family later sued Ventura County, arguing Lake Peru lacked proper safety signs and adequate life jackets. In 2022, the case was settled with a significant payout, all of it secured for Josie's future. Naya's Los Angeles home was sold, with proceeds directed into her son's trust. Ryan Dorsey later moved Josie to West Virginia, where Naya's sister Nikayla also moved in to help raise him. In rare interviews, Josie has admitted he sometimes blames himself, saying, "I should have saved Mom." But Ryan always reassured him, "You couldn't. The rope wasn't long enough. But she chose to save you. That was her greatest love." On July 24, 2020, Naya Rivera was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, among legends. The funeral was private, attended only by family, close friends, and the Glee cast. No press, no flashes, only tears, white flowers, and whispered prayers. Colleagues later shared that at the moment of burial, they held hands tightly. Many choked out her name. To them, Naya wasn't just a co-star. She was a sister, a friend, an icon. Today, when people speak of Naya Rivera, they don't only remember a star of Glee. They remember a mother who chose her son's life over her own. And for that, she will never fade from human memory. If Naya Rivera's death at Lake Peru in 2020 left the world grieving a mother's sacrifice, then 9 years earlier, Hollywood had already been shaken by another tragedy. Once again, water, the invisible enemy, claimed the life of another great talent. Michael Showers, 1966, 2011 tragedy on the Mississippi River. Morning of August 24, 2011. New Orleans sweltered in the heavy heat of late summer. On the vast Mississippi, a tourist boat quietly cut across the muddy waters. The captain, as always, scanned the familiar surface. But then, he froze. Something was floating. Not driftwood, not trash. A body. He quickly grabbed the radio and called it in. Minutes later, sirens shattered the thick, humid air. Police and rescue crews rushed in. Onlookers held their breath as the body was pulled from the river. And when the identity was confirmed, whispers turned into shockwaves. Michael Showers, age 45, a familiar face from HBO's Trem. Immediately, police traced the timeline. Showers had been reported missing since August 22nd. For 2 days, he vanished without a word. No calls, no sightings, no trace. And now he returned, not with his warm smile, but as a lifeless body drifting near the French Quarter, the beating heart of the city. The image sent a chill through New Orleans. A city alive with jazz, laughter, and nightlife was suddenly haunted by a quiet, lonely death. Questions echoed everywhere. Why was he there? What happened that night on the Mississippi? Was it foul play or just an accident? The autopsy gave an official answer. Drowning. No signs of trauma. No evidence of a crime. But for many, the explanation didn't erase the mystery. He had vanished in silence and returned in a way no one could comprehend. There were no witnesses, no goodbye, only a city slowing down, staring at the swirling river, asking, what happened during those 2 days? He was gone. News of Michael Showers' death spread quickly beyond Louisiana. For New Orleans, it was a double blow. Just as the city was proud that Trem brought the story of post-Katrina recovery to television, one of its own actors was lost in the very heart of the city. David Simon, creator of Trem, shared a heartfelt tribute. Michael Showers was a dedicated actor. He brought authenticity and depth to Captain Guidry. New Orleans has lost a piece of itself. Co-star Wendell Pierce wrote on Twitter, "Rest in peace, Michael." You will always be part of New Orleans' story and part of television history. On social media, thousands mourned. Fans recalled his appearances in Trem. Though not a lead, his face carried familiarity, warmth, and everyday truth. He felt like part of New Orleans itself, woven into the streets and jazz rhythms the show celebrated. Outlets like People CBS News and WWL-TV covered the story, calling his death an unexpected and unbelievable loss. Unlike many Hollywood stars, Michael Showers wasn't known for scandal or red carpets. Born in 1966 in Chalmette, Louisiana, he grew up with the everyday stories of the American South. He began with small roles, gradually appearing in films like Traffic 2000, I Love You, Philip Morris Columbiana, The Tree of Life, The Vampire Diaries, and even Breaking Bad. By 2011, he had gained notice as Captain John Guidry in Trem, a role tied closely to the city's spirit of rebuilding and resilience. Privately, Showers lived quietly. Little is known about his family or children. His material wealth was modest, but his artistic legacy was rich. He is remembered not for fortune, but for truth in his performances, especially in Trem. His funeral was held in New Orleans, the city he loved, the city that gave him to the world. It was private, simple, attended only by family, close friends, and a few colleagues. No stage lights, no media barricades. Only the sound of distant jazz horns and the city's familiar farewell ritual music instead of tears. Friends later recalled that at the graveside, many whispered softly, "Michael, you lived as part of us, and you'll remain here with the Mississippi." The funeral ended, but left a void in Louisiana's artistic community. Michael Showers died at 45, leaving behind unanswered questions that may never find resolution. The autopsy said it was drowning, but for many, the mystery of his two-day disappearance still lingers. And so, even after Naya Rivera's heartbreaking sacrifice in Lake Peru, the silent tragedies continued. On April 10, 2024 in Nigeria, one of Africa's brightest young film stars was claimed not by scandal, but by negligence in the very industry meant to protect him. Junior Pope, 1981 to 2024. The fatal accident on the Annam River, April 10, 2024. The midday sun burned down on Asaba Delta State. The film crew had just wrapped a scene for The Other Side of Life produced by Adan Malouk. They were crossing the Annam River in a wooden boat to return. On board were more than a dozen people, actors, crew members, and Junior Pope, born John Paul Odinwodo, age 42, father of 3, one of Nollywood's brightest stars. Just hours earlier, Pope had posted a video on social media, standing on the boat reciting a prayer, "Lord, bring us back safely, so we may see our wives and children again." Those words now feel like an ominous prophecy, because less than an hour later, tragedy struck. The boat suddenly lost balance, rocking violently in the current. Screams rang out. Passengers scrambled, clinging for safety. Then a crash. The boat capsized, throwing everyone into the rushing river. Panic consumed the scene. Some tried to swim, others flailed helplessly in despair. Junior Pope was among them. Arms reached up, cries for help pierced the air. But the current was too strong. Life jackets, what should have been there, were nowhere in sight. Minutes later, a few survivors were pulled to shore, gasping, coughing water. But Junior Pope was missing. The crew panicked. Calls for help went out. Villagers and rescue teams rushed in. For hours, they dove into the murky waters. And when they finally pulled a body onto the shore, silence fell. It was Junior Pope, lifeless, his face pale and swollen. Confusion followed. The Actors Guild of Nigeria (AGN) first announced he was still alive. Thousands of fans clung to hope. But hours later, the devastating truth was confirmed: Junior Pope had drowned. A cruel death just moments after he had prayed for his family. The news spread like wildfire. Nollywood and audiences worldwide were stunned. Friends and colleagues refused to believe it. Actor Jim Ike, his longtime friend, wrote with grief, "A different kind of pain, a loss beyond repair. Rest well, my brother." Presidential candidate Peter Obi also spoke. "This is a heartbreaking tragedy." Junior Pope didn't just entertain, he inspired and educated society. Other Nollywood stars flooded social media with tributes. Fans built online memorials, piecing together radiant moments of Pope's career. But outrage rose too. Questions echoed everywhere. Why weren't life jackets provided? Why use a dangerous river to transport cast and crew without safety measures? How could one of Nollywood's biggest stars die from such negligence? The press called it a wake-up call for Nollywood. Tweets and editorials turned Pope's death into a symbol for the urgent need for safety in Nigeria's film industry. The man behind the screen, away from the cameras. Junior Pope was a family man. Born in Bamenda, Cameroon in 1981 to an Igbo family, he studied accounting before turning to acting. His Nollywood journey began in 2006. Secret Adventure. 2007 opened the door, followed by hundreds of roles: Throne of Tears, Blood Affair, Mad Sex, Honey Money, No Way Through, and more. On July 26, 2014, he married Jennifer Awell Okpuno. Together, they had 3 sons, the pride and joy of his life. On social media, Pope often shared photos of his warm home, everyday moments filled with laughter and simplicity. He was considered one of Nollywood's wealthiest and most influential actors. But for Pope, value was never about money. It was in his love for the craft and the smiles of his wife and children when he came home from set. The funeral. Cries across. Enugu, May 17, 2024. His hometown of Ukehe Igbo, Etiti, Enugu State overflowed with mourners. Family, friends, colleagues, and thousands of fans came to lay Junior Pope to rest. The funeral was not silent. It was a sea of tears and heart-wrenching cries. His wife Jennifer nearly collapsed. His 3 young sons, too young to understand the depth of loss, only asked, "When is Daddy coming back?" Friends and colleagues remembered him as tireless, always bringing energy and positivity to set. Candles were lit, prayers whispered, and when the casket was lowered, Enugu fell silent. Junior Pope left this world at 42 at the peak of his career. But he did not leave a void. He left a warning to Nollywood film is not only about glamour, but also about safety. He left the memory of a devoted father, a loving husband, a gifted actor, beloved by millions. Let us leave behind not only grief, but also respect for these brilliant lives cut short. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to see more stories that matter.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.